What's up, you guys and Tundra owners out there? I got some great news. Well, that depending on how you look at it, as of October 15, 2024, Toyota issued out a tech tip. Tech tips are a little bit different than TSBs and recalls. It's not anything that the public may know about, but it's information for us to kind of get us ready for for a situation to come, or something that they might find beneficial for us to know about. So anyway, this is regarding the 22 through 23 Tundra engine assembly removal and installation precaution. Now, in the condition, it states some vehicles in the market may require the short block repair. And in certain circumstances, Toyota may request a dealer to repair such vehicles with an engine assembly instead. Please follow the recommendations below in addition to the steps for partial engine replacement in the repair manual when performing engine replacement with part number 04004-23370. So that's the part number for the complete engine assembly we are going to replace. Now, in the letter, it also goes on for the recommendation section. It says, during repair, the following recommendations must be followed or damage may occur. And they give us a series of steps that it wants us to follow. Now, in the precaution it wants us to take is regarding one, engine crate disassembly, two, engine assembly part number confirmation, three, engine hanger precaution. We're going to talk a little bit more about these things. Number four, torque converter precaution, five, engine scrapping process, and last but not least, engine seizures. And if engine is not seized, skip this section because they're going to have a certain process. If the engine came in seized up, we do this step, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, versus if the engine is running fine and they're just under the recall, what we should do then. So there's going to be two different processes here. Now, for the engine scrapping process, that's in a case where the engines and turbos are being recovered by Toyota. So that means the truck was still running fine, no knocking was present, but the vehicle was subjected to the recall. So because they're getting the whole engine assembly and their engine was still fine, we would have to send that engine back to Toyota. So they have a scrapping process for those engines that are still running. And if the engine are seized, there's a different process on what we should do then because Toyota doesn't want those engines back. Now, starting with the engine crate assembly. So they want us to use a Torx 25-bit socket to remove all the screws with arrows pointing to them, such as you see here in the example, to disassemble the crate. And it goes on to say you would not need to remove any nails. Like I said, this just came out October 15, 2024. So I guess the engine crate would be held on by T25 screws that would need to be removed in order to access the engine assembly. Now, the next recommended step is to confirm the engine assembly is part number, again, 04004-23370. And now it says, which includes intercooler, turbos, and fuel system, maybe the fuel rails, fuel injectors, the whole nine yards. While the new engine assembly contains most components, some components will need to be transferred from the existing engine to the replacement engine, such as they give us a list of stuff to transfer: starter, engine wire harness, alternator, AC compressor, drive belt tensioner, and drive belts. So anything that has to do with oil, anything that touches oil will be replaced in the engine. So it will all come complete. So that's why it's crucial to confirm. They want us to confirm that the engine assembly we're getting is that part number listed on this tech tip here. And it talks about it includes the intercoolers, the turbos, and fuel systems. So we want to make sure all those components are there. And and then, like I said, it talked about some of the stuff we would need to transfer the starter because it's not touching any oil. So if you have a seized engine or not, starter shouldn't really be affected. The engine wiring harness, that shouldn't be affected if you have a spun bearing or if you have a knocking sound. Those things are fine. Alternators, AC compressor, drive belt tensioner, and drive belt. That's probably the only thing listed here that we would have to transfer over to the new engine assembly. So that's good. And you guys, and this is the picture they provided us. So this is how the engine assembly would look. It comes complete. If you look, all the turbos are there. You can see the intercooler, front timing cover, everything's well intact. So the fact that they're doing this, like I said, for the technicians in the dealerships all around, this is actually good news for all of us because once we remove the engine, instead of having to strip it down, look at all that you get here. It's already complete. And all we have to do is transfer a few things like the starter and the things we mentioned earlier. Now, it does say we got to drain all the fluids from the engine and vehicle prior to removal. So they want us to drain the coolant, which that's what we would expect to do anyway. But probably, I'm sure they're talking about the engine oil because that's not really a necessary step that you need to do to drain the oil in it and able to remove the engine. The coolant for sure, and that's about it. But I guess they want us to drain the oil and all the fluids prior to removal. Now it goes on the next list of recommendations. It goes on to say do not use engine hooks or engine hook bolts that are included with the engine assembly when hoisting engine. In the letter, it says hooks attached to the engine are not meant to be used in dealers. They come with white or orange labels as shown below. Now, the correct hooks they want us to use will be provided separately. And it says the hooks will have thicker bases and require the use of longer bolts, which will also be provided. So the hooks they're saying that the engine will come with, not to use those hooks to pick up the engine. Those are not strong enough to handle the weight. Why do they have those hooks under? I guess whatever they were doing, assembling it, that's what they use. But they don't want us to try to use those same hooks to pick up the engine and try to install it in the car. I guess they don't want it to risk the engine falling off because they're not strong enough and that's not what they were designed for. So we do have different hooks in the shop, especially when we have to do the 2GRs on the Tacomas, and there's special hooks for those kind of trucks and vehicles. So it give us the picture of the correct hooks to use, which is this one right here on the screen. And then the ones not to use is the one right here that will come already with the engine. As you can see, the one to use is a lot thicker. And then the one that's already installed on the engine that comes in the crate is a lot thinner. And they don't want us to try to pick up the engine with those. Now, the next recommended step is torque converter installation. So it says prior to installing the new engine, ensure the torque converter is properly seated and matted to the oil pump as shown in the image below, referring to the appropriate repair manual installation instructions. Pay close attention to step number 2 for torque converter assembly installation. It is critical to align the oil pump drive sprocket at the 12 and 6 o'clock position as indicated in the diagram below, before installing the torque converter cutout to the protrusion on the oil pump. So this step is saying for whatever reason, if the torque converter is stuck to the back of the flywheel and you couldn't get the torque converter out, or it's seized for whatever reason, when you're installing the torque converter back on the transmission, they want the oil pump drive sprocket to be in a certain position, the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock position. They don't want it at the 9 to 3 or diagonal or anything like that. They want the sprocket on the oil pump to be at 12 to 6, and they want the cutout on the torque converter to match that sprocket on the drive and the oil pump itself. And then they want to make sure it's flush against the bell housing on the transmission. Like you see in the example right here, they just want to make sure it's seated properly before installing the new engine. That's only in the case where the engine is seized. Most of the time when we remove the engine, the torque converter doesn't come out, stuck to the engine. It's supposed to stay on the transmission itself. So only in a situation where we couldn't get the torque converter bolts out, then we would have to really follow this step. But if you have an engine that's still running, this step is not really necessary. Now, in this next step, it says render old engine assembly and turbos unusable after repair is complete, if not being recovered, and record the serial number of the new engine using the following methods. Send 4 pictures of the following with the repair order to quality@toyota.com. Now, this is what they want us to do. So they're saying if the engine is seized, it's already locked up, there's no investigation that needs to be done, there's no point of recovering this engine. So if it's not being recovered, we need to drill 2 holes, one in each rectangle you see in the image, and back of block while using drill bit larger than 3/8 in locations shown in image below. And another thing, it wants us to drill 1 hole in left turbo housing near turbo serial number while using 3/8 drill bit in at least one location per turbo as shown in images below. In another hole, drill 1 hole in right turbo housing near turbo serial number while using 3/8 drill bit in at least one location per turbo as shown in images below. And serial number of new engine outside wood crate, top of intercooler, or on engine block. So the engine that are being scrapped, not usable anymore. So if we pull one out of your truck and it blown up and seized, they want those 4 pictures emailed to them to confirm that, hey, you scrapped this engine completely. The turbos won't be used on another truck. You won't try to keep it for yourself and put it on another customer car. They want to know for sure you really scrapped the engine itself. So that's why they want us to drill the 2 holes on the back of the block, one on the left turbo, one on the right turbo, and send the serial number of the new engine outside of the wood crate, top of intercooler, or on engine block. And so we got to send them those pictures. And like I said, they're just trying to prevent any of those parts, being used on any other engine because you'll be back to square one and then you're going to say Toyota engine failed on this truck, all because you're trying to sell the turbos on eBay and then somebody else buys them for cheap. They don't want any of that happening. Those turbos are costly, so they want to make sure once it's scrapped for good. And then that's pretty much it. On the last page, it just talked about if the torque converter cannot be removed. Sometimes we get seized engines and you have to try to improvise as you go along to try to find a way to get that torque converter out of that flywheel. But that's all I got for you guys. They look like they're starting to roll things out. So I'm guessing maybe very shortly. I don't have an exact time frame. So they already giving us tech tips. You already seen the photo of the new engine assembly, how it will come. And on the engines that are still running, and on the trucks that were still good, but just under the safety recall that got the engine replaced, we are to put that engine back in the crate and send it back to Toyotas. I guess those they will be taken back. And I don't know if they're gonna do further investigation. They're not clear on what they're gonna do with them. But that's the different steps we gotta take versus one that is seized and one that is not. But that's all I got for you guys. Tundra owners out there, like I said, it's not the prettiest thing in the world to have to deal with, or some of these trucks are expensive and you don't want your car or truck sitting at the dealership for weeks waiting on this recall while you're still making payments. I get some of those comments, hey, what is Toyota gonna do as far as my payments that I'm making right now? Like I said, it's really a tough situation. And I feel for you guys. And like I said, at least Toyota's trying to make things right. Any future update that comes out, I'll be sure to make another video to keep you guys updated on what we hear. Hope you find this video informative. And if you did, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.